how different worlds harvest DNA. So they actually download their own self through light. And it's a very interesting thing because it's like sending the codes of every DNA of their world through light, because light travels faster through thousands and thousands of years from one planet to another. If they are close to us, they can modify our DNA through light. And actually, that's how our DNA is being modified, radiation from space. So beings that manage the fifth dimension, they manage the technology of light in a much better way than we do. We manage electricity, but not the pure light. So if you manage that technology, you can modify DNA through radiation.
Greetings and welcome back to the Dr. Espen podcast. I'm your host, Espen, today for the sequel, with Matias De Stefano. Last episode 93, went absolutely viral, over 100,000 views and downloads just on YouTube alone in less than a week. And a lot of people have said, hey, we want Matias back. We want to hear more. We want to ask a couple of different questions and so on. So before we drop in, I just want to say, Matias, it is so good to have you back. How are you today, man?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a privilege, buddy. So Matias, for those of you who don't know, he's a consciousness educator. He's known as the rememberer. Throughout his experience, have the ability to remember his past life in other timelines, dimensions, universes, and has been teaching very powerful spiritual concepts now for many years about what it means to be divine and what it means to activate, what alchemy is and how we can heal, and much, much more. So in the last interview, make sure you watch this as well. If you haven't already, episode 93, we discussed the nature of the universe or existence as a mistake. Very interesting topic. We're going to cover that today. Understanding the origins of the universe, the Hermetic principles or the 12 universal laws and their relevance. And what I loved in the last interview, Matias, is so you went really deep into the proton, the neutron, the electron, what this means at that level, which is really quite extraordinary. So guys, don't miss out on that. Go and check that out. We talked about fractals of the divine and the journey of remembering. We talked about breath work and the power of breath and the meaning of spirata, to breathe, spirit, air, breath, same thing. And we talked about how to activate dormant DNA and superpowers and much, much more. So Matias, let's just drop straight in there. I want to ask, last time we got a lot of comments, right, on the YouTube video, and all of them really, but specifically on YouTube, episode 93, and people asking, what do you mean by how the universe, the nature of this universe is a mistake? Can you just drop us right in there and elaborate, please?
Yeah. Well, there's so much to tell about it. The thing is that when we think about mistakes in a human culture that wants everything perfect, we think that is wrong. And a mistake is not wrong. A mistake is something that was taken in a different way. So I like to call that an error. An error means that something is moving. It's not how we perceive today the idea of an error, something that went wrong. An error is something that is moving into a direction that we don't know. That is actually an error. So the concept of this universe, this existence, is a mistake, is basically because light is moving in different directions, well, in a very weird way, because it's hitting all the particles. So it's constantly refracting and reflecting different things that are moving constantly in expansion. So what we perceive from the universe is actually not the origin of the universe. The origin of the universe is everything is static. Everything is like a golden egg where everything is bending towards nothing. And it's so concentrated that actually nothing can be perceived because light, waves, everything is moving in the same direction, in the right angle, until something is a little bit off. So because of this little bit off, all the light is spread in different directions, which means that now we can perceive different perceptions of only one thing. So it's not that someone committed a mistake or something went wrong. It's just that something is out of its its original angle. Therefore, we can perceive different angles, different positions.
Awesome. Thank God for the error. We get to
Yeah,
experience life
yeah,
in
yeah,
this dimension. Okay.
yeah.
Hey, you talk a lot about star races, star origins, star nations, and you've described different star races interacting with Earth across different timelines, which I find so fascinating. Can you please just break down what star races? I think many of our students and what people watching, they know, but they may not know which kind of star race they quote unquote belong to or might come from. Can you talk a little bit about what is a star race? What are the different star races? And how are they actively involved in humanity's ascension process right now?
Well, of course, the universe is very big, and there are many different beings in different star systems, not just in the ones that are close to us, but in so many different places. And not all of them are based in carbon. So they are not related to us, not even directly. They are directed to us. So maybe they have been evolving in a different way. So we can only mainly relate to those who are similar to us, that are carbon based or stuff like that. So that's why we relate the most with them. And first of all, I would say that today, when we talk about star races, we usually say, for example, Pleiadians, Arcturians, but those are not the names of them. Those are the names that we use to refer to the stars that we relate them coming from.
Mm.
So I think it's a very important thing to distinguish, because I don't know, it's like for the other side of the galaxy, it would be for everyone calling us the Sagittarians, because we are in the arm of Sagittarius, if
Yeah,
you got it.
right.
So it's like, oh, they are the Sagittarians, So if we put it that way, we are not. So we are from Earth, but the huge constellation that they might see is the arm of Sagittarius. So it's just a way for us to name them. Even the Draconians. When we say Draconians, we usually think that, oh, they might look like dragons. But actually, Draconians are referring to beings that might come from the point of view of the constellation that we call Draco, because from our point of view, it looks like a dragon. So we gave the shape of a draconian to the dragon people, but dragon people might be completely different. There are many different beings that have been in touch with this planet, but not all of them directly physically with us. I used to explain sometimes that when one of my memories of another world is about how different worlds harvest DNA. So they actually download their own self through light. And it's a very interesting thing, because it's like sending the codes of every DNA of their world through light. So because light travels faster, so through thousands and thousands of years from one planet to another, if they are close to us, they can modify our DNA through light. And actually, that's how our DNA is being modified, or it's because of radiation from space. So beings that manage the fifth dimension, they manage the technology of light in a much better way than we do. We manage electricity, but not the pure light. So if you manage that technology, you can modify DNA through radiation. And so what I remember is that most of them, for thousands and billions of years, have been downloading themselves through light. And I think that's very interesting, because we usually believe that all these races needs to come on a spaceship and they reproduce like a human in this world. But every species has a very different way to communicate with us through time. So yeah, so there are many, and not all of them directly interacted with us.
Yeah. So then we have different star races, star systems, right? I love how you share that in regards to the name and what we refer to them as, because that might not be obviously what they're referring to them as. You mentioned the Draconians, right? So we have the Reptilians. Some say that most of them are malevolent, as in they have an evil purpose. Some say that there are good ones. What are the main ones interacting with the species of Earthlings at the moment? What do we need to keep an eye out for?
Hmm. Well, good, bad, that is so relative.
I totally, and we're talking 3D. There is no such
Yeah,
thing as
yeah, of
good and
course.
bad in the world of
Uh,
duality.
of course, there's this constant thing about thinking that the reptilians are the bad guys of the movie, but that's how cows thinks about us too.
Yeah.
So we are the bad aliens. So it's a matter of perception. And for example, I used to say reptilians gave most of the information for humans to have a civilization in the ancient times. Like if you see every script of the ancient civilizations, all we know about the universe was because of a snake, because of a crocodile, because of a lizard, because of a dragon. So we owe the knowledge that we have to that. Basically, is the snake that gave the apple of the tree. So today we have it as the enemy, but in the ancient times it was not the enemy, it was the wise, the wisdom. So no one would see the reptilians as the enemy. It all started actually when we had other people involved in this, the Anunnaki, the Arcturians, different people that are not related to reptilians that taught us in a different way. And so many of the new traditions that we have today, more related to Christianism, to Judaism, is like the snake was the bad one. And if you see, those main religions are against the previous religions that had all the wisdom in alchemy, which were the Egyptians, the Native Americans, the Australians, all these wisdom people from the past. They usually have the snake as the one that is the wisdom keeper. And of course, for all the monotheistic traditions, are all pagans and bad. So that's why we, in our traditions today, still have this memory of, for us, the monotheistic people, the reptilians are the bad ones because they represent all of those that are in the past. So that's why it's so relative. It's not like, yeah, but of course, the reptilians have been the most in touch with us historically. And of course, after the Anunnaki, which were more related to us and established basically the way we think, the way we act today, the way we expanded our civilization in this planet. And I would say that today, the ones that are more related to us in what we call evolution and so on are the Arcturians. And the reason why they're called Arcturians is because the from our point of view, they come from Arctus, which is the constellation of the north. So that's why we relate to them as our guides and so on. And I kind of relate them like if they are physicians, scientists, physicians that are
Mm.
basically improving the DNA and doing such things. But none of them can interfere directly with a planet that is in the process of evolution because that would basically change their origin. It's not a very good thing to interfere in a planet that has your codes for the future. Is like planet Earth is kind of a Noah's Ark for some other beings. So it's forbidden to interfere directly. So
Mm.
yeah. But I think those are the mainly ones that are in touch with us.
Yeah. Yeah, I identified a lot with the Palladians, and then I had some introspection into the Syrian lineage. But the Arcturians been coming through a lot lately. A lot of the what they stood for and their teachings, and you mentioned physicians, and what they do feels really aligned. So there's this talk of Anunnaki, right? And some say the Anunnakis came, tens of thousands of years ago. They seeded us here on the planet through manipulating DNA and literally creating us. Is it true or false? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's not entirely true because, of course, we are an evolution from this planet. So we have evolved here. We are part of this planet. What was there was an interference, of course. Some has been modified, some has been touched. Not every human, but most. Um, and mainly most of the people that cross Middle East, many I don't know, maybe 2 million years ago. So the Anunnaki has been coming for a while to this planet until they disappear. They just all disappear. And one of the reasons why they needed that modification is because they wanted to survive and they were dying. So there were just a few of them, and they needed to transcend in another world. So that's why they, for I don't know how hundreds of thousands of years, they've been trying to merge with us so they could survive. So basically, today they're our ancestors more than aliens. Yeah.
Yes, and they genetically modified us to be in their image, and so they would say, is that about correct? And so many of us are descendants, or kind of partial,
Mhm.
partial Anunnaki within our own form. Is that about correct?
Yeah, we all have something about it. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay, anything else you want to add on that
About
note?
them,
Yeah, about them or anything relevant?
I would say to have this in mind. It's not that they came one day and they took hominids and transformed them into humans. It's been a longer process. That because when we listen to a story, it's like for example, I'm telling you a story right now, and um you might think that what I'm saying about, I don't know, the story of a human of a I'm telling you a story that I remember, and then when you go to someone else and tell, oh, Matthias told me this story, um you might say, I think that happened like 5 years ago, and for me happened, I don't know, 20 years ago. Okay, so uh and the way I told you the story, it might sound that all happened in 1 week, when actually happened in 10 years. So with this, it's kind of the same. That's why some people say no, it happened like some millions of years ago, and some says no, it was only 10,000 years ago. But actually, it's a whole process of evolution. It's a whole process that they have come here and they have been modifying, and so it's been so integrated in our own personal evolution as a civilization, as a humanity, that we see it like naturally happening, not like one day shift of everything. Yeah. So just to have that in mind, that it's still happening. It's not something that it stopped happening. It's something that is still happening, with some species changing us constantly. Yeah.
I love this because this leads perfectly into my next question. Can you talk a little bit about light body activation? So we have this concept. You mentioned carbon. So we are currently experiencing a carbon based dense reality. Okay.
Mhm.
But then some say, and I've heard you speak of very interesting concepts around this topic, that we are 12 stranded. You can correct me if that's incorrect, but some say we are 12 stranded illuminate beings that are currently operating at 2 strands of carbon DNA. And as we go through the awakening, remembering, coming home, activating process, strand 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and so on will illuminate or activate be- in our process of becoming the light body, the crystalline light body. Can you just teach us what is true, what is false, and maybe even add, what does one do to activate this incredible light potential?
Well, I think if I would know exactly what to do it, I wouldn't be here doing a podcast.
You wouldn't be in carbon. Get that
That's for sure. I don't know where I would be, but not here for sure.
everywhere. Yeah, right.
Yeah, totally. So it wouldn't be truthful or honest from my side to try to explain you how to do it, because it's my own life. But what I do know about it is that, of course, we are multidimensional beings, and our physical body is just an extension of something that is greater. So let's say that our human body is just the tip of the finger of the real being that we are. So all the potential that we have cannot be adapted into just a tiny body, even though we are like a seed. of all of those beings. So we are like a seed for that plant, for that tree, to activate all the potential. It's just that we still need to absorb the nutrients that requires for us to become the tree, not just the seed. And which means, of course, I have within all the potentiality, but I need to absorb what will activate that potentiality. So, like a plant needs nitrogen from the floor, from the soil to absorb and create more potency and energy and establish more minerals inside to reproduce the code. So we also have to do that in multidimensional ways. And and of course, the main concept and geometry of the universe is the code 12. So with the code 12, what we have is that you complete the structure of the geometry. So you have the whole Metatrons cube, basically, or all the archangels together. When we use these words, I'm not talking about archangels with wings. I'm talking about powerful energy or manifestations. For example, radiation. We cannot stand certain types of radiation. With our adaptation of this DNA from other dimensions, we can adapt to radiation, which means we can actually travel through space no problem. Because, of course, right now, if we go to space, we die unless we have all the equipment and stuff. But some beings have adapted their DNA to take that radiation as part of the process, like the nitrogen of the space. An archangel is basically a radiation, so it's a very high pitch vibration of light that we cannot process. So in our process of evolution, we are gonna activate that. But if we have only two working, that means, and we have been for millions of years evolving, imagine how long it takes for a human body that is nothing to evolve into the 12th. So it's not something that you do in one life. You actually do it when you transcend life, when you are beyond your human being. So it's all about adaptation to light, and that's why we are calling and saying we have to become more light beings and so on. But become more light beings, it means to adapt to radiation. It's not just like a spiritual thing about levitating and being enlightened. So for a being to be enlightened has to kind of tolerate uranium and plutonium, so it's like an atomic bomb inside of you to harvest all the power that you can actually have in the universe. So these levels of activations requires for us to break and break and break until you take the potentiality of every atom in your body. And for that, we need a long time of breaking and evolving constantly. So what is the best way to actually do it? What I would say is to not to get stuck with the same shape, to allow yourself to realize that you are not just a human, that you are so many things, that you are the entire tree of life, but represented in just a tiny body that can only function with a specific DNA. And that when you open yourself to any transformation, you can adapt to new things. I will put some silly but dangerous example. Maybe it's like a lot of people is complaining about 5G. Yeah? So 5G is terrible. Let's say 5G is terrible, is terrible. Yeah, I agree, because for our condition of human body, 5G is terrible because it's out of the right frequency. But for some babies that are being born today, it might not be terrible because they were born and even produced in the womb in an environment with 5G. So maybe that radiation today for them means nothing. It's part of the evolution. So now if we go like billions of years ago, um, we were in the oceans, in the bottom of the oceans. So any type of light, it was terrible. So imagine if every cell under the ocean would have said, "Don't go to the light; it's terrible because it's gonna kill you." Or the first cell going outside, the first animal or insect going outside the water and trying to process oxygen. It's like, imagine oxygen, the most toxic thing in the environment ever. Like now we think it's like, oh, let's take a deep breath and bring some oxygen in, but that oxygen is poison. We just had to adapt and die many thousands of times and millions of times until one managed to process oxygen and use it for energy. In the same way we use fuel today, in that time we use this toxic chemical in the environment to produce energy, and now we call it oxygen and air. So to improve our DNA, we are going to have to go to more toxic environments and to expand our potentiality. That's why I mean to break. A being that is constantly like meditating, safe, in calm, usually is not evolving into those other strings of energy, because it means that it just prepare its own being to adapt to only one environment. And I think that's kind of that's why we have to go through shit. It's like that's why we go to the darkness to face so many crazy things. The thing is that we are so into survival. We are so into I want peace. I want to live in this little box that is protecting me. That is not evolution. The only one that activates more DNA or more information in our DNA is the one that dares to jump, to go farther, to cross through a toxic environment and learn from it. I would say if you are living in a toxic environment, instead of thinking, how do I escape from here? Try to think what I'm taking for my own evolution from this environment. And that that is one of the first steps for your next 5 billion years of evolution until you have the 12.
So are we dreaming if we think that and hope that we will be, activating all strands of DNA by 2040 kind of thing? I mean, where are we heading? Let's say now 2025, 26 is coming up, 2030. A lot of people talk about 2032. Have you got any idea of what we can expect? I mean,
Well, I'm
this,
going to be very sincere. I don't want to be close to anyone that has 12 strings. like like if they have 12 strings, it means it's a bad situation for everyone around. So it's like if suddenly from being a human you just turn into a light bulb and and you can electrify everyone around you. so so it's like it's not like you can go in the cinema on a Saturday night.
all right, all right. What role do you think unprocessed trauma and karma plays in this awakening, in this healing process?
Karma and
And unprocessed trauma.
oh well, karma as is not the enemy of the process, as I said before. uh Toxic environment helps us evolve. So karma is basically the the process in which you uh, acknowledge that you have this toxicity. So when you um, when you become aware of it, then you can turn it into dharma through a process of alchemization. So you have this karma or this trauma, and the trauma is this venom that is happening to you. So something cut you, something hit you, something hurt you, and now your body has a memory. Okay, this is the memory of this poison. Now my body will always remember constantly that geometry of that cut, of that hit, just for me to be able to transform it into my medicine. So when it repeats and repeats and repeats, it's not something wrong. It's not something bad. It's like you going to school repeating every day the same word until you know how to say it, or riding a bicycle until you know how to ride it. So traumas are not a bad thing. Karma is not a bad thing. is a bad thing when you don't know how to use it and you get trapped in it with a constant loop of the mind saying, why me? Why me? This is terrible. I'm not getting out of here. Like it's more about the mind than the trauma itself. Yeah. I always explain like it's like if someone gives you a hammer and instead of asking how do I use it, you start to hit yourself. So that's how unconsciously most of people operate with karma, and instead of asking or open themselves, I don't know how to deal with this. What do I do? I might need support. Um, so I need to understand better why this is happening. And sometimes, in order to know how to handle it, you don't need truth. You just need another perspective. And we have today, um, well, throughout the last 2,000 years, we had this thing with the truth that is too intense. Um, we want to know the truth. We want to know the truth. And it's so difficult to know the truth because the universe is basically a perception. So, in a universe that is mental, that is a mind, it's very difficult to know what is true. So, we are losing a lot of energy trying to figure out what is the truth, and we are losing a lot of energy trying um, to know how to learn how to heal. Um, when the purpose eventually is gonna die, it's about to die. Um, so we lose a lot of energy into those two things. I want to leave and I want the truth. And in a universe that you only live 80, 90 years and the rest is infinite eternity of expansion. And in a universe that prioritize the options instead of the only truth, I think we lose a lot of our energy in our life trying to find those two. And so karma is just an option for you to open yourself to different perceptions, to evolve in a better way, to find different ways of expansion. Because remember, after your 80 years, it's going to be an infinite of possibilities. So if you don't learn the infinite possibilities before that, then you're losing time being trapped in only one. And that's why people is trapped in karma, because we're constantly trapped in the same story once and again, trying to solve only one story when you have the infinite to practice.
Mm.
So I think it's very, very useful to see trauma as a master and karma as a tool and not as something you have to solve or leave behind.
Oh, this is good. I like the clarity on that. As a teacher, you often say that this is an earth school, like a school for souls.
Mm-hmm.
And so could trauma and karma then be part of the curriculum?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah, of
Mm.
course. And when you see it that way, and I think it's good for all of us to remember what happened when we were to school and how difficult were things that for us today is very easy, and sometimes how we still have some traumas from school, from tiny little things. Like I still remember that this is very. I just realized about something which is amazing. When I was 15 or 16 years old, 15, I was in school in Spain, and my school in Argentina was like very high level. So we needed to be like it was a farm school, but we had like 26 topics. So it was like a lot of things to learn from the fields, from everything. So when I went to Spain to school, to a public school, it was only 8 or 9 topics and it was very easy. So I was doing like very fast the whole process. It was very fast. And there was one teacher that hated me. She hated me because I knew everything about geography and so on. So she hated me. So there was a moment that she told me about a map. She was asking which countries in Europe, like what are these countries, what the capital and so on. And she asked me the only country that I had no idea about. And I felt so ashamed of that even today, for me, it's a trauma. And in this moment is the country that I choose to create my foundation for everything that I want to do in the future. And I fail, and I had to close the foundation. I had to destroy everything that I created in that country, and it still is a pain. So imagine how some little things that happened to me when I was 15 years old are the things that today I am still struggling with in a huge level. Because before it was just a few minutes in a classroom, and now it's a huge process with a lot of people. And so when you are just concentrating in that pain instead of alchemizing the process, it gets bigger and bigger, but the same thing keeps repeating. So that's why I'm saying to transcend this idea is easier to compare our process with something very tiny that could happen in our school to understand why on Earth sometimes we ended up with a war, for example, a huge conflict in the Middle East. And why is that? And when we try to solve it with what is happening today, we would never understand the origin of that tiny little thing that created the whole ball of actions because no one opened a different option, a different possibility. That's why we see karma in a very bad way, when actually it's just a little process to learn. But instead of learning about it, we just kept the weight of it.
Yeah, I like that analogy. Okay, cool. I like that. Okay. And, I teach very similar things. I say, life didn't happen to you, happened for you. If you are a soul, how, for example, me losing my brother when I was young, you know, how did that help me evolve and learn and grow? And the biggest one, of course, when you lose someone really close to you, is that you don't take life for granted. And so
Mhm.
I was able to learn what it means to truly live. And I'm far from perfect, but I would dare to say that I live in the moment more than a lot of the people that I know. And I don't take life so seriously. I used to be so serious. And some people say that this is a hologram, that this is a matrix. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, just for context, right? So new research now shows that we only see 0.8% of the colors that exist, right? And
Yeah.
0.035% of the sounds that exist, that's what we can hear. If that's the case, well, then we're only processing less than 0.1%, 0.08, I think it is. But let's say it's less than 1% of all the information that exists. Are we in hologram? And if this is a big simulation, a big game, how do we play it to the best possible game? What do we do?
Yeah. Yeah. That's very interesting. Yeah. First of all, to understand this, we can use the analogy of hologram and game because it's very easy for us to understand it that way. Um, and it doesn't mean that the universe works like our games or our holograms, because to to take this idea away, that is a program that is, I don't know, like a technology that is creating holograms. It's not it's not in that way. Um, the universe is a hologram, yes, of course, but it's not being projected from a technology. The universe is a game, yes, but it's not because someone is just playing with us like if we are pieces of it. So, that being said, then the entire universe is just the projection of a proton that is moving. Is only one. That's the unity. So the rest is just a hologram. So every possibility that actually exists in the universe is so infinite that we cannot perceive, as you said, we cannot perceive less than 0 point something of the reality. It's impossible to perceive the whole because the whole is so vast, because it's infinite in its potentiality. So we will never reach to see the 100% of the universe, because to see the 100% of the universe, it means that you are nothing. It means that you became the proton again. So basically, you are a black hole in the infinite of the quantum realm. And this thing that is vibrating so fast is in so many places at the same time that is creating everything that we see. And we have evolved, as we were talking before, to just perceive a percentage of radiation. Because if we perceive the rest of the radiation, it means that we stop existing. We cannot perceive anymore what we are. That's why I said when you activate the full potential of a human being, you cannot go to the cinema. You cannot go for a date because basically you are a light being with a lot of radiation around you. This process of creation is actually a constant creation of a hologram. And we are just playing different ways to perceive more. So the game is basically how do we adapt ourselves to perceive the patterns of that proton and that electron that is moving around so we can see the patterns. It took us a few millions of years, a few millions and millions of years for us to see some colors. It took us billions of years for us to adapt to air. So everything that we perceive today that we don't pay attention to, like to see the color red or to see the color blue, it took thousands of years for us to practice on how to see it. And now it's just there. We don't even pay attention to it. So every time we are opening more perceptions to perceive more things, but to go there, to perceive that, you have to crack yourself. You have to go farther. You have to play that game. And how do you play that game? You have to follow things that you cannot see, that you cannot touch, because it's invisible for your perception. So that's why religion, spirituality, psychology, everything that doesn't exist, the world of ideas, is not just a random thing that we made up, is the nonsense that helps us to find the new senses. And that's very important for us to play because this thing, for example, of following signs, like people say, oh, 1111. I saw 1111, where I saw a name there on a wall that was something that we were just talking there. So we usually say, wow, what a coincidence, or that's a message from my guides. Actually, it's not. Actually, what you are doing is to play the game of perceiving the fourth dimension. And we cannot see the fourth dimension. We cannot sense the fourth dimension. So how do you get ready to perceive that other percentage of reality? So you have to make it up. You have to create new pathways with imagination until you create it as your own reality. So that's why I think it's important for all of us to keep imagining, because all the genius that discover things in science, usually they were just having a dream. They were making it up. They were using science to prove it, but actually imagination was the way in which they discovered it because they traced patterns that were not there. It's like I've been talking about Mendeleev and the periodic table with the chemical elements. So he calculated a way to discover the mass of every atom. So he could see that there were gaps in that table that meant that there is an element, a chemical element that has that amount of mass that we don't know yet about. But he even named them because he knew that it existed there. And many years after, they discovered those elements. So reality became true just because we open ourselves to perceive more, just because of imagination, of using patterns that are not there. So in my life, for example, I travel from one country to the other just following patterns. I go to Turkey to see how the story of Turkey connects with Patagonia, to understand the mountains and some chemicals that connects the entire robberies of the planet. And then I share that to people. And it's like when you hear it from the outside, it's like, this is crazy. This makes no sense. But for some people that start to see the patterns, they start to discover things from their own lives, their own stories. They ask questions that they never asked and discover things that they couldn't see before. So how do you play in this hologram? Well, remember that everything is a projection of the mind, that everything is just one proton that is projecting. And the only reason why things exist is because we got used to see them. We created patterns in our mind that enables to see it. So our first human being that evolved passed on the cells that allows us to see what he saw. So it's not that we are seeing the reality. We see what we were designed to see because of everything that happened. So we see the patterns that the first humans were able to see. And whoever starts to play with new patterns, try to find new codes, then you start to see a new reality. Then you open yourself to new possibilities of those protons that are moving around. And for that, you have to create a game. You have to make yourself play an imaginary game and dare to live like a kid.
Mm, I love that. You know what? That part, I think, is absolutely crucial. You mentioned something, someone would say that it's crazy to go from country to country just following the patterns. Some would say it's crazy to sit in a cubicle for 8 hours a day for decades in a row and take 4 to 8 weeks off per year to see this majestic water planet. So, what is crazy? And that's for you watching and listening to tune into. But also, if this is a hologram or a game, then how do you want to play? What is life? What is joy? What is fun? What is experiences? And you mentioned like a child. For me, now that I'm a father, to see the world through the eyes of a child, not childish, but childlike, has been one of the greatest gifts that I can give myself. I step out on the streets. I just arrived here in New York, as I mentioned. I walked out in a Big Apple. I'm like, wow, look at this place.
Yeah.
I was walking around with that awe in my mind. It's very, very special. I'm glad that you brought that up. So, guys watching, what does that mean for you? Okay, I got two last questions for you. I would love, Matthias, if you can tell us about Alchemia, if I pronounce that right. You have for years and years been working on synthesizing so many different wisdoms from traditions and timelines and lifetimes and all of the above, and you've remembered. And now it's coming together in a journey of awakening and a journey of inner alchemy. So please tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, of course, talking about what we just said about playing with a game with the mind, one of the first alchemies in the planet was not about to turn lead into gold. It was about to shift consciousness, to shift your mind to be able to see a different reality. So to do that, the first alchemists actually learned this because they saw how a seed turned into a tree. So it's like how this tiny thing can turn into this huge thing that has so much potential. And why that only happens when this little thing enters the darkest of the soils.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it goes deep into the dark and it gets trapped in the dark, that's when the potential grows as a huge tree. And so they call that process alchemy, which literally chem means dark soil. Yeah. So chemistry is basically the soil that is dark. So alchemia or alchemy is the concept of everything that grows from the dark soil. So it's basically the origin of agriculture. But then they said, well, a human, if it's also a seed and it goes to the darkness, so it can also become the tree of life or the tree of knowledge. So how do you turn a human into a whole humanity or God? So that is the comparison of the first alchemy of the mind. So you have to go to the dark and harvest all the chemicals to take the potential of your mind to expand in the tree of knowledge so you can create the tree of life. So what I decided in this next 3 years is to jump on a journey that I'm inviting everyone to do, that I'm going to do day by day and guiding everyone into the process. But it's going to be a 3 years in a row, day by day, doing an alchemical process, and which is an adventure of the mind, trying to play with your mind. And the whole thing, it's going to be around one of the most important things that will happen in the next few years, which is the eclipse of that is going to happen in Luxor in Egypt. Is the longest eclipse of the century, the longest one that are going to be able to see.
When is that?
August 2nd,
Ah,
2027.
okay.
So the whole alchemical process is going to have that eclipse as the seed of the whole tree that is going to be the 3 years. So we are going to build the structure of the tree every solstice, equinox, full moon, new moon, every 12 days, working one element of the periodic table. So we're going to work all of that around that eclipse in Egypt, which is where alchemy started in the Nile, and actually was the name of Egypt in the ancient Egypt, Alchemit. That's the origin. And so for 3 years, we're going to walk together online. I'm going to be guiding everyone in the process, telling a story. So the idea is to tell a story that helps us to remember our own story and to walk our own darkness and to turn every poison that we have within into medicine. So yeah, and the goal of all of it is to harvest the poison of Apophis, which is an asteroid that is going to cross our skies on April 13th, 2029, which is an asteroid that could destroy us. It's not going to destroy us, but science thought that it might. So the idea is to alchemize the fear of destruction into the potential of creation.
That
That's
is
my
alchemy. Okay,
yeah.
last question. No, actually, there's one more thing, and then the last question. Where do people go to learn more about Alchemia? We need to tell them where to go.
In the next month, we are going to start to share everything through my Instagram, where they can follow everything. It's going to be in a blog, in YouTube. So we are going to share every step, which days we're going to do everything, where are going to be the events, what do you have to do, everything. So I think from November 11th, we're going to start sharing everything.
Got it. And the Instagram, so you guys know, is Matias without the H. So Matias De Stefano in one word. Okay, so that's where you go to check that out on Instagram. It's a great place to stay connected and see what happens and what comes through and new things that you share and teach. Well, here's the last question straight off the cuff. Are you ready, my friend?
Let's see.
And let's see. Okay, you are on the world stage. Every sentient being alive has gathered, watching, tuning into your message. When you're ready, please take a breath and then share. What is your message to the world right now?
Mm. We are all living in the times of confusion. More information, more confusion. And this is our time to get all this confusion and to turn it into our inner knowledge. So, everything that is happening outside right now, every conflict that we are having in this planet today, is not talking about actual facts, is about how our mind is working today. So, our most valuable asset right now is the way we think and the way we feel. So, stop seeing everything that is happening in the world right now and to try to think and feel what is happening within you.
Mm, we don't have to go without when we go within.
Mm-hmm.
Oy, oy, oy. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it again. Matías De Stefano, everybody. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.